Imagine a city that does not know its name beyond its own borders. A city that does not know it will one day be remembered as the beginning of everything. A city that wakes slowly. Not because its people are lazy, but because time here does not chase anyone. Light arrives first, before sound, before footsteps, before eyes fully open. It passes over stone, revealing a faded color. Not bright white, not dark. A color that has lived for a long time. This is Athens, not as imagination paints it, not a city of shining columns or perfectly arranged statues. It is a real city, uneven, full of corners, full of paths that were not designed but formed because people walked there often enough. The houses are close together, closer than they should be. Their walls carry the marks of years, small cracks, stones that change color with the sun. The doors are wooden, heavy, used too much. They open and close as if they are breathing. No one thinks about beauty. Beauty is not a priority. Living is. The smell of dust is always present, even after rain, even after night. The city does not try to be clean. It is simply there. With the first movement in the streets, the day begins. Men step outside, not heroes, not thinkers, just ordinary men carrying ordinary concerns. Some go to the market, some to work. Some do not know exactly where they are going, but leaving the house itself is part of the day. Their steps are steady. No rush, no hesitation. In the background, others move in silence. Slaves, their names are rarely called. Their opinions are never asked. Their presence is understood and requires no explanation. They carry, they clean, they follow. The city stands on their shoulders without ever admitting it. Women are present in a different way. Their voices are rare in the streets, but their influence inside the homes is clear. Behind closed doors, life is managed. Food is prepared. Children are raised. Cloth is woven. The world moves, but not in the open square. Children fill the empty spaces. They run, they stumble, they laugh without a clear reason, bare feet on hard ground. They learn the names of things before understanding why those things exist. And the elderly, they sit often, not because they cannot move, but because watching is part of wisdom. They observe the city as if they know it will not remain the same, but they do not know when or how. In Athens, time is not measured in minutes. The day is measured by light, by shadow, by the position of the sun. No clocks, no bells, nothing cuts a conversation short. If speech begins, it continues until it ends, and this matters, because speech here is not just sound. Speech is a way of existing. The public square, the agora, an open space, irregular, not beautiful in an artistic sense, but it is the center of everything. Goods are sold here, news is exchanged here, voices rise here and fall. People stop, gather, disperse. No one directs the scene, no leader, no order, a slow chaos, familiar. In the agora, what matters is not only who speaks, but who is allowed to speak. In Athens, to be a citizen means something very specific. Not everyone who lives here is a citizen. Not everyone who works here has a voice. The citizen is the free man, born to an Athenian father and mother. Only he has the right to speak and to be heard. Democracy here is not a romantic idea. It is an incomplete system, limited and yet revolutionary for its time. For the first time, speech becomes a tool of power, not lineage alone, not strength alone, but the ability to persuade. And this changes everything. In the corners, small opinions are spoken, unheard, but present, side conversations, passing remarks, questions asked, then forgotten. The city feels no danger, nothing seems threatening. Today resembles yesterday. Tomorrow will resemble today. The sun rises higher, shadows shorten, movement increases. The city is now fully awake, and no one knows that this calm will one day be tested. No one expects that simple questions will someday become accusations. But this is not now. Now Athens is simply living. When the city begins to speak by midday, Athens no longer whispers. The streets are warmer now, stone holds the sun, shadows retreat toward walls and gather beneath doorways. Movement becomes heavier, slower, more deliberate. People stop more often, not because they are tired, but because stopping is part of how the day unfolds. The agora grows louder, but not suddenly. Voices overlap, then separate, then overlap again. Nothing here happens all at once. Merchants speak first, not loudly, confidently. They repeat the same words many times a day: prices, weights, promises. Listening is a skill here. So is pretending to listen. Men gather in small circles. They lean in, then step back. A word is offered, another challenges it, a third softens the tone. Arguments in Athens rarely begin as arguments. They begin as questions. What do you think? Why should this be so? Who benefits? Sometimes the questions dissolve, sometimes they remain. Not all voices carry the same weight. Some men are listened to longer, others are interrupted more often. Reputation matters, confidence matters. The ability to hold silence matters most of all. In Athens, silence is not emptiness, silence is pressure. A pause can invite agreement or expose weakness. Here, speech is measured, not by speed, but by control. Nearby, others stand and watch. They hear everything, but nothing belongs to them. Slaves wait. They adjust baskets, they shift their weight. Their eyes move often, their mouths remain still. Women pass through the edges of the square. They do not stop. They are not expected to. Their presence is brief, almost accidental. Children weave through the crowd, unaware of boundaries, unaware of importance. They repeat words they do not understand. They mimic gestures. They learn without being taught. As the sun reaches its highest point, conversation changes, less laughter, more seriousness. Topics turn heavier: war, alliances, laws. The city listens to itself, not in unison, not with agreement, but with attention. Here, disagreement is not failure, it is a condition of life. A man raises his voice, another answers calmly. The circle tightens, then loosens. No verdict is reached, no conclusion is announced. That is not the purpose. The purpose is the act of speaking itself, to be heard, to respond, to remain standing. Athens does not fear conflict as long as it is spoken, as long as it stays within words. The heat lingers, the pace slows again. Some leave the square, others arrive. The city breathes in, shifts. Nothing has changed, and yet everything is moving. Unseen patterns are forming, habits of speech, expectations, invisible lines. No one notices them yet. They feel natural, permanent. By late afternoon, voices soften. The agora empties gradually, not all at once. Footsteps echo longer, spaces widen, the city begins to tire. And still it does not know what kind of questions will one day be asked here, and who will be forced to answer them. For now, Athens remains comfortable with its own voice. Evening in Athens. As the day begins to lean toward evening, Athens does not announce the change. There is no clear moment when day becomes something else. The light simply lowers itself, gradually, almost politely. Shadows stretch again, longer now, more patient. Stone cools, not quickly, but with relief. The streets do not empty, they thin. Movement becomes quieter, less purposeful, more habitual. People return the way they came, often without thinking about it. Feet remember paths better than the mind does. Doors open, then close. The sound of wood against wood echoes briefly, then disappears. Inside the homes, life resumes its smaller rhythm. Food is shared, not ceremonially, not with gratitude spoken aloud. Eating is routine, necessary, unremarkable. Hands tear bread, bowls are passed, water is poured. Conversation drifts from what matters to what fills time. Someone mentions the heat, Someone complains about the price of grain. Someone repeats a rumor heard earlier and changes it slightly. Memory is already at work. Children slow down. Their energy fades unevenly. One yawns too early. Another refuses sleep. An argument breaks out, then dissolves without resolution. In Athens, many things end this way. Outside, the streets listen. The city absorbs voices, steps, fragments of thought. Nothing is lost. Nothing is recorded, only carried. As darkness approaches, lamps appear, small, flickering, unreliable. Light is no longer generous. It must be maintained. Oil is precious. Attention is required. Night demands care. Those who remain outside walk more carefully now. Edges blur. Distances deceive. Athens at night does not invite wandering. It invites return. In quieter corners, men sit together, not to debate, not to persuade, just to be present. Silence becomes more acceptable after sunset. The city relaxes its need to speak, and yet the habits of speech remain. Earlier conversations replay themselves inside individual minds. A question asked at midday returns without context. A pause remembered feels heavier than it did before. Someone wonders why a certain answer was avoided. Someone else recalls how easily others agreed. No conclusions are reached, only impressions. Athens does not reflect collectively. It reflects privately. Each man alone with fragments of the day. Above them, the sky darkens fully. Stars appear, not dramatically but indifferently. They do not care about the city below. They do not witness democracy or injustice or ambition. They simply exist. This too matters, because Athens, for all its confidence, is small. Its concerns feel immense only to those inside it. Beyond the hills, life continues differently. But here, inside these walls, repetition begins its quiet work. Tomorrow will resemble today. Men will walk the same paths, speak in the same places, disagree in familiar ways. The agora will fill again, then empty again. No one will call it tradition, but that is what it is becoming. Patterns harden not through intention, but through comfort. What feels normal feels safe. What feels safe is rarely questioned. And yet Athens believes it welcomes questions. It prides itself on them. It does not notice that some questions are received warmly, while others are gently redirected, not forbidden, just discouraged. No laws are broken, no threats are spoken, only expressions shift, only attention drifts away. This is how limits form, softly, invisibly. Night deepens. Somewhere a man walks alone, not toward the center, but away from it. He thinks as he walks, not urgently, not with purpose. Thinking for him is not a task, it is a condition. He passes familiar faces, they nod, he nods back. No one stops him. He is not remarkable yet. He blends into the city as it winds down. His questions are not sharp tonight, they are not dangerous. They exist only in him. Athens sleeps peacefully because it believes it understands itself, because it believes it knows where speech belongs, because it believes that what has always worked will continue to work. The city has no sense of foreboding. No omen interrupts the night. No sign announces change. History does not warn. It waits. As lamps go out one by one, Athens becomes quieter than it was at dawn. Not empty, just inward. The streets hold their shape. The buildings hold their warmth. Tomorrow will come, and when it does, Athens will wake again, as it always has. Unaware that the very thing it values most, the freedom to speak, will one day be tested by a voice that refuses to soften. But that day is not yet visible. For now, the city rests, complete, confident, unquestioned. Morning returns to Athens without ceremony. Not as a fresh beginning, but as a continuation. The city does not reset itself overnight. It carries yesterday quietly into today. People wake because their bodies tell them to, not because time demands it. Inside the homes, the day begins in small motions. Hands reach for water, feet touch cold stone floors, eyes open slowly, already aware of what must be done. There is little choice involved. Life in Athens is built from repetition. Men prepare to leave, not with excitement, not with dread, Leaving the house is simply part of being useful. Clothing is simple, practical, worn more for durability than for appearance. Fabric carries the shape of its owner. Not the other way around. Outside, work is already waiting. Some men walk toward workshops, small spaces, crowded, filled with tools that have been used by many hands before. Metal is heated, wood is shaped, stone is chipped slowly. There is skill here, but little pride spoken aloud. Craft is survival first, identity second. Others walk toward the land beyond the walls. The soil is unforgiving. It does not care for philosophy. It responds only to effort. Hands press into earth. Seeds are placed with familiarity. The body remembers what the mind does not question. Farming is not noble. It is necessary. Food does not appear by thought alone. Inside the city, the market begins to assemble itself, not suddenly, piece by piece. A basket set down, a cloth unfolded, a scale adjusted, the same motions performed by the same people in the same places. Prices are argued over with practiced frustration. No one expects fairness, only consistency. Bread is purchased daily. Freshness matters more than variety. Meat is rarer, reserved for days of importance. Hunger shapes habits. Athenians eat not to enjoy, but to continue. Meals are modest: bread, olives, cheese, water, or diluted wine. Eating is brief, functional. No one lingers over food unless there is reason to talk. And talk, as always, finds a way. Children are sent out once tasks allow it. Boys follow men, they observe. Learning does not begin with ideas, it begins with imitation. A boy learns how to stand, how to listen, how to wait for his turn to speak, and when not to speak at all. Education in Athens is uneven. Some boys are taught letters, others are taught trades. Few are taught both. Learning is privilege, not expectation. Girls remain inside longer. They are taught different skills. Skills that do not carry voices into public spaces. They learn to manage households, to stretch resources, to remain unseen. Their knowledge is deep but narrow, necessary but uncelebrated. No one calls this injustice. It is simply how things are. Slaves move between all of this. They cross boundaries others do not notice. They enter homes without belonging to them. They perform labor without recognition. Some are educated, some are not. Their abilities vary. Their status does not. They are present everywhere, yet absent from all decisions. Athens depends on them without acknowledging the cost. As the day progresses, work settles into rhythm. The body adjusts. Movements become automatic. Time passes without being counted. Fatigue is accepted as a natural state. Rest is not earned. It is postponed. At midday, heat slows everything. Shadows are sought instinctively. Work pauses, not stops. Conversation softens. This is when stories are exchanged. Small stories, personal ones, complaints, observations, recollections of better days that may not have existed. Memory edits freely. After the heat passes, work resumes, not with energy, but with resignation. This is how days are completed, not through inspiration, but through endurance. As evening approaches, tasks wind down, tools are set aside, hands are washed. Sometimes, the city prepares not for reflection, but for rest. Another meal, another conversation, another night that will erase most of what happened. Athens does not archive its days. Only a few moments will matter later. Most will vanish without trace. And yet these ordinary days form the foundation of everything that follows. Ideas do not appear in isolation. They grow inside routines, inside labor, inside hunger, inside repetition. Before there were questions about justice, truth, or virtue, there were people trying to get through the day. Athens is built on that reality, not on marble alone, but on habit, on lives that did not know they were supporting something larger. Tomorrow will repeat this pattern, and the day after that, until in the midst of the ordinary, something unfamiliar is spoken aloud. But for now, this is enough. This is life before disruption. In Athens, learning does not arrive all at once. It enters life slowly, unevenly, and not for everyone. For some boys, education begins outside the home, not in buildings meant for teaching, but in spaces borrowed for it. A shaded courtyard, a quiet corner, a place where voices can travel without being overheard too closely. Learning starts with letters, not ideas, symbols scratched into wax, sounds repeated until they settle. The goal is not understanding, it is familiarity. To recognize words before questioning what they mean. Patience is praised. Obedience is assumed. A boy learns when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. Mistakes are corrected quickly, sometimes gently, sometimes not. Discipline is considered necessary, not cruel. It is believed that the mind must be shaped before it can be trusted. Others learn differently. They are sent to workshops, to farms, to boats. Their education is physical. Hands learn before minds do. Bodies remember what words never reach. They learn timing, endurance, awareness. They learn to follow instructions without asking why. This too is considered knowledge. In Athens, no one believes that everyone should learn the same things. Difference is natural. Hierarchy is expected. Education follows status, and status rarely changes. Girls learn almost entirely within the home. Their lessons are quieter. They observe. They imitate. They learn how to manage absence, how to keep things functioning without being noticed. Their intelligence is practical, immediate, often underestimated. They are not taught rhetoric. They are not taught debate, not because they are incapable, but because they are not expected to speak publicly. Silence is part of their training. And silence, when practiced daily, becomes habit. Slaves receive education only by accident. Some are taught to read because it is useful to their owners. Others learn through proximity. They hear conversations they are not meant to join. They understand systems they are never allowed to influence. Their awareness is sharp. Their power is non-existent. Athens rarely acknowledges this contradiction. The city prefers clean categories. As boys grow older, education becomes more selective. Only a few are encouraged to continue. These are the sons of citizens with time to spare. They are taught music, poetry, memory. They learn to recite, to perform, to impress. Knowledge becomes social currency. To speak well is to be respected. To argue clearly is to be admired. Truth matters, but delivery matters more. In these lessons, students are taught how to persuade, not how to doubt. Questioning exists, but within limits. Certain assumptions remain untouched. The gods are real. The city is right. The system works. These are not debated. They are inherited. No one calls this indoctrination. It is simply education. As years pass, young men begin to appear in public spaces. They listen more than they speak. They observe how older men carry authority, who interrupts whom, who finishes a sentence, who is ignored. Power is learned before it is exercised. Athens does not teach rebellion, it teaches participation. To belong, one must adapt. Even philosophy, when it appears, is expected to serve the city, to refine it, to strengthen it, to justify it, not to threaten it. Those who learn too much or ask too freely stand out. At first, this is admired. Original thought is praised as long as it entertains, as long as it remains abstract. Problems begin when thought turns personal, when questions point outward and then inward. Why do we obey these laws? Who decides what is just? What makes a good life? These questions exist, but they are usually softened, turned into exercises, debates without consequences. Athens is comfortable with thinking as long as it remains theoretical, but daily life continues beneath all of this. Most people never encounter formal education. They learn through repetition, through correction, through necessity. They know when to plant, when to sell, when to stay quiet. This knowledge is invisible, but essential. The city runs on it. At night, after lessons end and tools are put away, thought returns privately. Some replay words they heard earlier, others forget them entirely. Ideas do not spread evenly. They travel slowly, unequally, one mind at a time. Athens does not realize how fragile its balance is, how dependent it is on unspoken agreements, on shared assumptions that no one has tested fully. Education here creates capable citizens, but also unquestioned ones, people who know how to speak, but not always why they speak the way they do. For now, this is enough. The system functions, the city thrives, but beneath the surface, something subtle is forming, a gap between what is taught and what is lived, between what is said and what is believed. It is not yet visible, not yet dangerous. It is simply present. And presence, given time, can become pressure. Class, distance, and the quiet weight of inequality. In Athens, difference is visible, but rarely discussed. It exists in posture, in clothing, in where a person stands and how long they are allowed to speak. Social class is not announced. It is understood. A man's place reveals itself naturally. Some walk with ease through public spaces. They stop when they wish. They speak when they choose. Others pass through quickly, carefully, as if movement itself requires permission. Wealth in Athens is unevenly distributed. Some families own land, others rent their labor. Some have time, the most valuable resource of all. Time to talk, time to think, time to be seen. Most do not. For the majority, life is narrow, defined by work, bound by necessity. Their concerns are immediate: food, shelter, stability. Politics feels distant, important, but unreachable. They hear decisions after they are made. Power does not require their presence. Reputation, however, moves through every layer of the city. It is fragile, hard-earned, easily damaged. A good name opens doors. A damaged one closes them quietly. In Athens, public perception matters deeply, not because people are vain, but because survival often depends on trust. Who do you trade with? Who do you listen to? Who do you avoid? These choices are guided by what is said when you are not present. Gossip is not trivial here. It is informational. It shapes alliances, it influences judgment, and it travels faster than truth. Those with status are forgiven more easily. Their mistakes are reframed, their intentions assumed. Those without status are scrutinized, their actions questioned, their words remembered. Justice is not blind, it is observant. The poor understand this early. They learn restraint, they learn caution. They know when silence is safer than honesty. Resentment does not announce itself. It accumulates, quietly, over years. Not as anger, but as distance, a sense that the city does not fully belong to them. They live inside Athens but do not feel claimed by it. This distance is rarely expressed. To do so would change nothing. Instead, it settles into habit. Meanwhile, the wealthy navigate a different reality. Their problems are abstract, political, philosophical. They debate governance while others debate survival. This separation is not malicious, it is structural. Athens does not see itself as divided, it sees itself as ordered, each person in their appropriate place. Harmony, not equality, is the goal, but harmony requires acceptance, and acceptance is not universal. Those excluded from decision-making observe closely. They watch how laws are applied, how exceptions are made. They notice inconsistencies, not as philosophers, but as witnesses. They see who benefits and who adapts. Over time, this awareness sharpens, not into rebellion, but into skepticism. A quiet question forms: is this city truly fair, or merely stable? Athens prefers stability. Change is discussed only when necessary. Tradition carries weight, it reassures, it legitimizes. We have always done it this way is a powerful argument. Few challenge it, and those who do are tolerated. At first, as long as they remain polite, as long as they do not persist. Persistence is uncomfortable, it suggests conviction, and conviction, when it contradicts consensus, creates tension. At social gatherings, status reveals itself subtly. Who is invited? Who speaks first? Who interrupts? Hierarchy is reinforced through repetition. No violence is needed, custom does the work. Those at the margins learn to navigate carefully. They choose moments. They avoid confrontation. They understand that visibility can be dangerous. Yet beneath the calm surface, emotion accumulates. Not rage, but weariness. A tiredness that comes from always adjusting, from always accommodating. Athens functions smoothly because many people carry burdens without complaint. The city praises itself for order, but order is maintained by unequal weight. Some carry more, others carry less. This imbalance is rarely questioned directly. Instead, it becomes background. like stone beneath the feet, always present, never considered, until someone notices, until someone names it, until words begin to connect what was previously endured in silence. For now, that moment has not arrived. The city continues as it always has, confident, structured, unequal, and unaware that awareness itself is beginning to grow.
Friends, the unexamined life is not worth living. Seek wisdom, for it is the greatest good.
Socrates, before the trial, the man, the presence, the irritation. Before the trial, before the accusations, before the sentence, there was a man walking through Athens as if he belonged nowhere in particular. Socrates did not announce himself. He did not dress differently. He did not seek attention. He did not ask to be followed. And yet people noticed him. Not immediately, not all at once. They noticed him because he stayed. He lingered where others passed through. He stopped where others moved on. He listened longer than was comfortable. Socrates was not impressive by appearance. He was not known for beauty, not for wealth, not for status. He owned little. He needed little. This alone made people uneasy. In Athens, a man without visible ambition is difficult to categorize. Socrates had no profession in the usual sense. He did not build, he did not sell, he did not farm. He spoke, but not as a teacher, not as a lecturer. He spoke as someone asking for clarification. He approached people who were already confident, men with reputations, men with authority, men whose words carried weight. He did not challenge them directly. He asked them to explain themselves. What is justice? What is courage? What is virtue? Simple questions, ordinary words. At first, these conversations felt harmless, almost flattering. To be asked is to be acknowledged. Men enjoyed the attention. They enjoyed speaking. But Socrates did not move on after receiving an answer. He stayed. He asked another question, then another, not aggressively, not sarcastically, patiently, as if he genuinely wanted to understand. Slowly, something shifted. Definitions began to loosen. Certainty weakened. Men contradicted themselves without realizing it. Socrates did not point this out sharply. He simply repeated their words back to them. Is this what you mean? Is this consistent with what you said earlier? Silence followed, not the comfortable kind, the kind that exposes. Socrates never raised his voice. He never declared victory. He allowed others to hear their own confusion. This was his method, not teaching, but uncovering, not persuasion, but pressure. Athens did not know what to call this at first. Some found it entertaining. A public unraveling could be amusing, as long as it happened to someone else. Young men began to gather. They followed Socrates not because he offered answers, but because he made powerful men stumble. This alone was dangerous. Socrates did not encourage them. He did not recruit. He did not organize. He simply continued walking, talking, asking, but attention accumulated around him whether he wanted it or not. And attention, in Athens, always carries consequences. Those questioned by Socrates began to feel something unfamiliar. Not disagreement, but exposure. Their knowledge, once assumed solid, now felt thin. They had spoken confidently for years. Now they hesitated, not because they had changed their minds, but because doubt had entered. Doubt is quiet, but it spreads. Some reacted defensively. They laughed it off. They dismissed Socrates as odd. Others grew irritated. Why does he always ask questions? Why does he never answer? Why does he pretend not to know what everyone already knows? The phrase began to circulate, he makes the weaker argument appear stronger. Now, this was not meant as praise. It implied manipulation, deception. Socrates denied this. He claimed ignorance openly. He said he knew nothing worth teaching. This, too, unsettled people. In Athens, ignorance is tolerated only when it is temporary. To claim it permanently felt unnatural, suspicious. Why would a man refuse certainty? Why would he dismantle ideas without replacing them? Socrates did not explain himself. He did not offer justification. He believed, or claimed to believe, that exposing false knowledge was more important than offering new doctrines. This belief did not fit easily into the city's rhythm. Athens valued speech that led somewhere. Debate with conclusions, arguments with outcomes. Socrates led conversations into uncertainty and left them there. He walked away while others remained uneasy. This was not how public dialogue was meant to function. Gradually, the irritation grew, not everywhere, not all at once, but among those with something to lose, politicians, poets, teachers, men whose authority rested on being believed. Socrates did not attack them, but he weakened the ground beneath them. He revealed how much of public confidence was built on repetition, not understanding. Athens tolerated many things: eccentricity, debate, even criticism. What it did not tolerate well was embarrassment, especially public embarrassment, especially when caused by someone who refused to play the game. Socrates did not flatter. He did not align himself with any faction. He could not be predicted. This made him difficult to defend and difficult to control. Still, at this stage, he was not considered dangerous, merely annoying. A presence that disrupted conversations, a voice that slowed certainty. The city could live with that. For now. Socrates continued walking. Through the agora, through workshops, through quiet corners, he spoke with craftsmen, with soldiers, with politicians. He treated them equally, which was itself a provocation. He asked the same questions regardless of status. This equality of inquiry felt disrespectful to those accustomed to hierarchy, but Socrates did not see hierarchy as relevant to truth. Truth, he believed, did not care who spoke it. This belief was not shared, and, slowly, almost invisibly, the city's patience began to thin, not because Socrates broke laws, but because he disturbed something deeper, the unspoken agreement that confidence should not be challenged too often or too publicly. Athens had built itself on speech. Socrates was testing how much speech it could endure. At this point, no one imagined where this would lead. The conversations still ended with laughter, with dismissal, with relief that nothing serious had happened, but the questions remained, and questions once planted do not disappear easily. They wait. How a city begins to turn. At some point, a city stops asking, "Who is this man?" and begins asking, "Why is he still here?" This shift is quiet. There is no announcement, no public decision, only a change in tone. Socrates did not change his behavior. He still walked, he still asked, he still listened. But Athens changed around him. The laughter that once followed his conversations began to sound forced. The curiosity of onlookers turned cautious. People still gathered, but they watched more closely. Not for insight, for consequences. Those who had been questioned began speaking to one another, not openly, not publicly, in private spaces, behind doors. After gatherings ended, they compared experiences. He asked me the same thing. He made me hesitate. He repeated my words until they felt empty. A pattern emerged, and patterns invite interpretation. Some began to suspect intention. Surely no man dismantles ideas this consistently without a goal. If Socrates claimed ignorance, it must be a disguise. If he refused authority, it must be strategy. Athens was accustomed to rhetoric with purpose. Speakers sought votes, poets sought recognition, teachers sought influence. Socrates sought none of these. That made him unreadable. And unreadable figures invite projection. People began to assign motives. He corrupts the youth, he undermines tradition, he weakens respect for authority. These claims were vague, but vagueness spreads faster than precision. Young men were still following him, not formally, not as students, but they listened. They repeated his questions elsewhere. They challenged their elders with the same calm persistence. This was not rebellion, but it felt like it. Fathers noticed changes at home, not disobedience, hesitation. Why is this just? Why is this honorable? Why should this be accepted? Questions once settled were reopened. Athens had raised its youth to speak. Now it watched them speak back. Socrates did not instruct them to do this, but he modeled it, and models shape behavior without commands. The city had survived war, plague, political upheaval. It had learned to fear instability. And instability rarely announces itself loudly. It begins with doubt. Some began to recall old stories about Socrates, the oracle, the claim that no one was wiser. This story had once sounded amusing. Now it sounded dangerous. If he believed himself singularly qualified to question others, what did that imply about the rest of the city? Others focused on his refusal to teach for money. This too became suspicious. Why refuse payment? Why reject the usual exchange? Perhaps because he wanted something else, influence without accountability. These interpretations hardened. Socrates, meanwhile, continued to deny knowledge. He continued to say that recognizing ignorance was the beginning of wisdom. To some, this sounded noble. To others, it sounded like an excuse to avoid responsibility. Athens valued contribution. A man was expected to add something visible to the city. Socrates dismantled without rebuilding. He left uncertainty behind him and walked away. This unsettled those who believed order required firm answers. The word dangerous was not used openly, not yet, but it hovered. The city had laws against impiety, against corruption. These laws were old, broad, flexible. They were not meant to be used often, but they existed for moments like this, moments when discomfort needed a name. Some began to speak more carefully around Socrates. Others avoided him. A few confronted him directly. Why do you do this? Why do you never answer? Why do you make people doubt what they have lived by? Socrates did not defend himself. He did not reassure them. He said only that an unexamined life was not worth living. This sentence spread, detached from its context, repeated without explanation. To some, it sounded like a challenge. To others, an accusation. Athens began to feel accused, not by force, not by argument, by implication. If life must be examined, then many lives had not been. This was not something a city wanted to confront, especially a city already fragile. Political power in Athens was unstable. Trust in leaders was thin. Any figure who appeared to erode confidence was a risk, even unintentionally, especially unintentionally. Socrates did not align himself with any political group. This should have protected him. Instead, it isolated him. No allies, no defenders, only conversations that could not be easily summarized. As suspicion grew, the tone shifted again, from irritation to justification. People began asking, should someone like this be allowed to continue? Not because he broke laws, but because he exposed how fragile agreement really was. Athens had always celebrated speech. Now it questioned its own tolerance. At this point, the decision had not been made. No formal charges, no official action, but the direction was set. When discomfort lasts long enough, it demands resolution. And when resolution is needed, a figure must be chosen, not the most powerful, not the most violent, but the one who symbolizes the tension. Socrates did not know this was happening, or if he did not change course. He continued walking, continued asking, continued listening. The city, meanwhile, was preparing itself. Not consciously, not collectively, but emotionally. The ground was shifting, and soon what had once been tolerated would need to be judged. The trial begins, accusation, atmosphere, and the weight of the city. The trial of Socrates did not begin with anger. It began with formality, with routine, with the calm repetition of procedures Athens had used many times before. This was not an exceptional day in appearance. The sun rose as it always did. The streets filled as usual. The agora carried its familiar noise. Yet beneath this normality, something heavier moved. A decision, long prepared emotionally, was finally taking shape. Socrates arrived without haste. He did not appear distressed. He did not appear confident. He appeared as he always had, unremarkable in posture, unadorned in dress. No attempt was made to soften his image, no attempt to impress. This absence of performance stood out. The charges were read, impersonal, measured. They accused him of impiety, of failing to acknowledge the gods of the city. They accused him of introducing new spiritual influences, and most importantly, they accused him of corrupting the youth. These words were familiar. Athens had heard them before, directed at others. They were flexible accusations, broad enough to absorb many fears. Socrates listened. He did not interrupt, not because he agreed, but because interruption would have implied urgency. He did not treat the charges as an emergency. This unsettled some in the court. A man facing judgment was expected to react, to plead, to protest. Socrates did neither. The accusers spoke first. They framed their argument carefully, not as personal grievance, but as public concern. They spoke of influence, of young minds, of tradition under pressure. They did not need to prove intent, only effect. They did not need to show that Socrates meant harm. Only that harm followed. This distinction mattered. Athens did not judge thoughts, it judged outcomes, and the outcome, they argued, was instability. They described a man who questioned too freely, who undermined respect without offering alternatives, who left uncertainty where certainty was required. The court listened. Many jurors had seen Socrates before. Some had heard him speak, some had heard about him. Few felt neutral. Neutrality had faded long before this day. The atmosphere was not hostile, but it was not sympathetic, it was cautious, the kind of caution that precedes distance. When Socrates finally spoke, he did not adopt the expected tone. He did not flatter the court. He did not appeal to emotion. He did not speak as a defendant trying to survive. He spoke as if continuing a conversation. He addressed the accusations indirectly, not by denial, but by examination. He asked what corruption meant. He asked how one could prove the harm of questioning. He asked whether improvement could occur without discomfort. These were not courtroom strategies. They were philosophical habits. The court felt this mismatch. Trials demanded clarity. Socrates offered reflection. Trials demanded conclusions. He offered uncertainty. Some jurors felt irritated. Others felt uneasy. This was not how defense was meant to function. Socrates refused to simplify himself. He refused to present a version of himself designed for acquittal. He spoke of his role in the city as something imposed, not chosen, a necessity, a disturbance. He compared himself to a presence that keeps the city awake, not an enemy, but an irritant. This metaphor did not reassure. It suggested permanence. It suggested that even acquittal would change nothing. Socrates made no promise to stop, no indication that he would adapt. This was crucial. The court was not only judging what he had done, it was judging what he would continue to do. Athens did not fear past behavior, it feared repetition. The more Socrates spoke, the clearer this became. He was not seeking permission, he was explaining inevitability. The accusations of impiety were addressed briefly. Socrates spoke of belief not as ritual but as inquiry. He did not reject the divine, he questioned how it was understood. This distinction mattered to him. It mattered less to the court. Public religion in Athens was not a private matter. It was a social glue. To question its language was to loosen its hold. Socrates did not mock belief, but he did not protect it either. He treated it as something open to examination. This neutrality felt dangerous. The accusation of corrupting youth carried more weight. Here, Socrates again refused the expected defense. He did not present students to speak on his behalf. He did not list achievements. He asked instead whether thinking critically was corruption, whether obedience without understanding was virtue. These questions did not land softly. They landed as challenges. The trial slowly shifted from an evaluation of actions to an evaluation of values. And values, once questioned publicly, demand resolution. The court was no longer listening to a defense. It was confronting itself. This was not the purpose of a trial. The jurors felt this. Some resented it, others feared it. Socrates stood alone. Not because no one admired him, but because admiration did not translate into protection. The city was not angry, it was tired. Tired of ambiguity, tired of exposure, tired of a man who would not stop asking what things meant. As the first phase of the trial drew to a close, the question before the court was no longer simple guilt. It was this: can a city built on speech survive a man who refuses to stop examining it? The answer had not yet been spoken, but its shape was forming. judgment, silence, and what remained. The verdict was delivered without drama, no shouting, no chaos, only voices reciting a decision that had already settled inside the city. Socrates was found guilty. The words did not echo, they did not need to. The room absorbed them as if they belonged there. Athens had spoken. The next step followed custom. The accused was invited to propose his own punishment. This moment, more than any other, revealed the distance between Socrates and the city judging him. Others before him had begged, they had pleaded, they had offered exile, silence, obedience. Socrates did not. He did not collapse into humility. He did not bargain for survival. He spoke calmly. He suggested almost gently that a man who had spent his life questioning false certainty deserved care, not punishment. This was not arrogance, it was consistency. Socrates refused to present himself as a criminal. To do so would have been a lie. The court did not receive this as philosophy, it received it as defiance. The second vote was harsher. The sentence was death, not in anger, not in haste, but as a final correction. Socrates listened. He did not lower his head, he did not raise his voice. Those present expected a final emotional turn, a moment of regret, a plea. It did not come. Socrates spoke instead about obedience to law, about the danger of escaping judgment, about the city as something one lives within, even when it errs. This unsettled many. A man condemned refusing to condemn his judges, a man sentenced to die defending the structure that destroyed him. There was no hatred in his words, only acceptance, not passive acceptance, but chosen. The trial ended, the crowd dispersed, Athens returned to its routines. The execution did not happen immediately. Time passed. Socrates remained as he always had, speaking, listening, unafraid. When the moment came, it was quiet. No public spectacle, no audience, only a small circle. The poison was prepared. Socrates did not hesitate. He drank without trembling. As his body weakened, his voice remained steady. He spoke of care, of responsibility, of unfinished obligations. Even in death, he avoided final answers. When the silence arrived, it did not announce itself. It simply stayed. And then Socrates was gone. Athens did not celebrate. It did not mourn publicly either. The city moved forward as cities do. Markets opened. Debates continued. Laws remained. But something had shifted. The questions were quieter now, not fewer, but more careful. People spoke with greater certainty or avoided speaking at all. The absence was not obvious, but it was present. Those who had followed Socrates felt it immediately. The walking stopped. The open conversations ended. Young men who once questioned freely learned restraint, not from command, but from memory. Plato left the city, not in protest, not in anger, but in distance. Athens no longer felt like a place where questions could survive without consequence. The death of Socrates did not erase his influence, it reshaped it. He could no longer be dismissed as irritating, he could no longer be silenced by avoidance. He had become a measure, a reminder of how a city responds when examined too closely. Athens spoke less about the trial over time, not because it forgot, but because remembering was uncomfortable. The story did not fit its self-image. A city proud of speech had executed a man for speaking differently. No official apology followed. None was needed. The discomfort was punishment enough. Socrates did not leave behind a doctrine, no system, no school, only a method, only a way of standing inside uncertainty without fleeing it. This was harder to contain than any teaching. Centuries later, his name would survive, not because he won, but because he refused to stop asking what victory meant. Athens continued. Empires rose, fell. The trial became a footnote. But the question remained, not spoken loudly, not written into law, only waiting for the next voice brave enough to ask what everyone else has already agreed not to question. And in that silence, Socrates still walks.